Don't play with the children. The lawyer called it an unclaimed inheritance. I called it a burden. Blackwood Manor. The name itself felt like a line from a Gothic novel nobody read anymore. It had sat vacant for the better part of a century, a stone and timber fossil moldering on a forgotten plot of land upstate. It was mine now. The last of the Blackwood line, a title I'd never claimed or even wanted. My branch of the family had severed itself from the trunk generations ago, leaving the rot to fester in private. The lawyer called it an unclaimed inheritance. I called it a burden. Blackwood Manor. The name itself felt like a line from a Gothic novel nobody read anymore. It had sat vacant for the better part of a century, a stone and timber fossil moldering on a forgotten plot of land upstate. It was mine now. The last of the Blackwood line, a title I'd never claimed or even wanted. My branch of the family had severed itself from the trunk generations ago, leaving the rot to fester in private. I'm an architectural preservationist. I restore things. I find the soul in decaying structures and coax it back to life. So, when the deed arrived, a part of me, the foolish romantic part, saw it not as a burden, but as the ultimate project. A chance to connect with a history I never knew, to literally rebuild my roots. The house was formidable. It stood on a low hill, a silhouette of sharp gables and darkened windows against a perpetually overcast sky. It didn't look haunted, it looked exhausted. The air inside was thick with the holy trinity of abandonment, dust, damp, and decay. But the structure was sound. Good bones, as they say. I walked the echoing halls, my footsteps the first to disturb the silence in decades. The initial sounds were predictable. The groan of floorboards under my weight, the sigh of wind through a cracked window pane, the arthritic creak of a door on its rusty hinges. I was a pragmatist. This was the language of old houses, and I was fluent. I dismissed it all as the house settling, stretching its ancient limbs after a long slumber. The first week was a whirlwind of assessment and planning. I slept on an air mattress in the grand foyer, the moonlight painting long, skeletal shadows through the Palladian window. It was during the second week that the house began to speak in a new dialect. It started as a whisper, a faint, sibilant hiss that seemed to slither from the walls themselves, always vanishing the moment I tried to pinpoint it. Then came the sounds of movement from the floor above, not the slow creak of settling wood, but a light, scuttling patter. Rats, I told myself, making a note to call an exterminator. But rats don't giggle. The first time I heard it, I was in the library, poring over old county maps. It was a faint burst of laughter, high-pitched and clear like a child's. It seemed to come from the end of the long upstairs hallway. I froze, my heart a frantic bird against my ribs. The sound was so out of place, so impossibly alive in this dead place, that my brain refused to process it. I stood up, my ears straining against the sudden, profound silence. Nothing. I must have imagined it. Stress. The isolation. But it happened again the next night, and the next. It was always children's laughter. Sometimes a single sharp giggle. Other times, a pair of them, their joyous shrieks echoing as if they were chasing each other through the vacant rooms. I never heard footsteps with it, only the laughter itself, disembodied and chillingly playful. Sleep became a stranger. I started seeing things, or rather, almost seeing things. A flicker of movement in my periphery. A small, dark shape darting from one doorway to another just as I turned my head. It was classic pareidolia, my tired mind playing tricks, creating patterns from shadow and light. I knew this. I was a rational person. But knowing the science behind a phenomenon doesn't make the hair on your arms lie flat when it happens. My project had now become an investigation. I needed to know what happened here. The lawyer's file was thin, mentioning only the Blackwood tragedy of 1928. A quick search of online newspaper archives filled in the grim details. My great-great-uncle, Arthur Blackwood, his wife, Eleanor, and their 2 young children, Lily and Thomas, had vanished from the house one autumn night. No bodies were ever found. No signs of a struggle. It was as if the 4 of them had simply ceased to exist. The case grew cold, and the house was left to its ghosts. The laughter now felt less like an echo and more like a clue. Were these the spirits of Lily and Thomas, trapped in a loop of their final, happy moments? The thought was more sad than scary. I decided to focus my search on the family's personal effects, hoping to find a diary, a letter, anything that could give me a window into their lives before they disappeared. I found it in a locked steamer trunk in the attic, tucked away beneath a pile of yellowed linens that crumbled to the touch. Eleanor's diary. The leather was cracked and dry, the clasp rusted shut. I pried it open with a screwdriver, my hands trembling slightly. The early entries painted a life of idyllic isolation. Eleanor wrote of her love for the house, the beauty of the gardens, the boundless energy of her children. Lily, the elder at 8, was quiet and artistic. Thomas, at 6, was a whirlwind of mischievous energy. October 12th, 1928. The children have found a new game. They call it the shadow game. They say the house has friends for them, ones that live in the dark corners and behind the walls. Arthur finds it morbid, but I think it's just the product of 2 vivid imaginations in a house with too many empty rooms. They spend hours hiding from these shadow friends, giggling in the hallways. It's a comfort, in a way, knowing they are never truly alone here. A cold dread trickled down my spine. I kept reading, my breath held tight in my chest. The tone of the entries began to shift. October 19th, 1928. A strange thing today. I was in the kitchen and heard Lily laughing in the parlor. It was her laugh, but sharper, colder. When I went to see, she was standing in the middle of the room, alone, staring at the wall with a smile on her face. When I asked who she was playing with, she just whispered, "The one who hides best." There was something about her smile. It didn't reach her eyes. The activity in the house escalated in tandem with my reading. A child's small, muddy handprint appeared on the inside of a second-floor window I hadn't touched. The old rocking horse in what I presumed was the nursery began to creak back and forth on its own. Its slow, rhythmic thump, a steady heartbeat in the silent house. The laughter was no longer distant. It was close. Sometimes it felt like it was right behind me, a puff of cold air against my neck. I was living on coffee and adrenaline, the diary my only companion. I devoured Eleanor's frantic, spidery script. October 25th, 1928. Thomas won't speak to me anymore. He just hums. It's a strange, tuneless melody that seems to come from deep in his throat. He and Lily spend all their time in the nursery now. I tried to go in yesterday, but Lily stood in the doorway and blocked my path. She didn't say a word. She just looked at me. Her eyes, dear God, her eyes looked so old. I saw a shadow move behind her. It was tall, taller than a child. October 28th, 1928. The game has changed. They told me so themselves this morning. It's not hide and seek anymore. It's called invitation. They say their friends want to meet us? Arthur is boarding up the nursery door tonight. He's terrified. He thinks the house is sick, that it's infecting our children. I think he's right. The laughter isn't their laughter anymore. It's a mimicry, an echo with teeth. The final entry was almost illegible, the ink smudged as if by tears or rain. October 29th, 1928. Arthur is gone. I heard a scream from the nursery an hour ago. I broke through the boards. The room was empty. The window was wide open. But we are on the 3rd floor. He couldn't have. The children are here. They are in the corners. I can see them. They are not my children. They are black spaces shaped like my children. They are smiling at me. Such wide, white smiles. They have no faces, only smiles. They are beckoning. The game is over, they whisper. It's time to join. They want me to play too. It's the only way to be a family again. My blood ran cold. I slammed the diary shut, the puff of dust making me cough. It wasn't a haunting. It was a consumption. Something in this house had taken them, and now it was starting on me. That night, the house threw off all pretense of subtlety. The laughter was constant, a cacophony of cruel mirth that echoed from every direction. It wasn't the sound of ghosts. It was the sound of predators. A high-pitched voice, clear as a bell, whispered my name from the top of the stairs. Ilara, come and play, Ilara. Every rational instinct screamed at me to run, to grab my keys, get in my car, and drive until Blackwood Manor was nothing but a bad memory. But the diary, that last entry. Eleanor didn't sound like she was being dragged away. It sounded like she was giving in. The only way to be a family again. The words snagged in my mind. What did she mean? Driven by a terrifying, morbid curiosity that overruled all self-preservation, I grabbed a heavy iron fireplace poker and started up the stairs, my heart hammering against my sternum. The cold intensified with every step, clinging to me like a wet shroud. The laughter grew louder, more distinct, coalescing at the end of the hall, at the nursery door, which now stood slightly ajar. I pushed the door open. The air inside was glacial, stealing the breath from my lungs. The room was just as I'd found it, empty save for the dust-covered crib, a chest of drawers, and the rocking horse. The horse was now rocking violently, its wooden frame groaning in protest, as if an invisible, manic child were riding it into oblivion. The laughter stopped. The silence that fell was absolute, a crushing weight that was somehow more terrifying than the noise. My eyes scanned the room, darting into the deep shadows pooling in the corners. And then I saw them. In the far corner, next to the window, the shadows were darker than they should be. They began to deepen, to coalesce, pulling the darkness from the rest of the room into themselves. 2 figures bled out of the gloom. They were shaped like children, a girl and a boy, but they were made of nothing. They were holes in the world, silhouettes of absolute black. As Eleanor had written, they had no features, no eyes, no noses, no hair, just the shapes and the smiles. Etched onto the featureless void of their faces were 2 impossibly wide, bone-white smiles, thin and sharp like cracks in porcelain. They turned their heads in unison, their non-eyes fixing on me. The smiles widened. A dry, rasping whisper filled the room, seeming to come from the figures and from the walls all at once. You found us. Now it's our turn to find you. Do you want to play? They took a step forward, but they didn't walk. Their bodies seemed to unfold, their limbs stretching and contracting at unnatural angles, like stop-motion puppets animated by a malevolent will. The poker felt like a toothpick in my hand. My body was screaming, every nerve fiber alight with primal fear, telling me to turn, to flee, to do anything but stand there. But my feet were rooted to the floor, and my mind was somewhere else entirely. It was fixated on Eleanor's last words, on the loneliness that had driven me here in the first place. I was the end of the line, the final forgotten twig on a dead family tree. I came here looking for a connection, for roots, for a sense of belonging I had never known. I thought I would find it in wood and stone, in restoring a legacy. I looked at the unfolding, smiling darkness before me, at the things that had once been Lily and Thomas. I looked at the utter certainty in their posture. They weren't asking a question. They were stating an inevitability. They weren't ghosts of a tragedy. They were the outcome. This house didn't create ghosts. It created residents. It offered a different kind of permanence, a different kind of family. They stopped a few feet away from me, their heads cocked, their static smiles promising an eternity of games in the dark. The fear was still there, a cold, hard knot in my stomach. But something else was blooming alongside it. A strange, warped sense of acceptance, a solution. I had been so terribly alone for so long. My lips, numb with cold, began to curve upwards. The iron poker slipped from my fingers and clattered onto the floorboards, the sound deafening in the silence. I smiled back at the darkness. "Yes," I heard a voice say, a voice that was mine, but somehow different, clearer, sharper. "A game of hide-and-seek sounds like fun." And as the featureless silhouettes reached for me, their shadowy arms extending to welcome me home, I knew this story wasn't an ending. It was a beginning. It's so quiet here, in the walls. We wait patiently for the house to be discovered again, for another lost soul from our long-forgotten bloodline to come looking for answers, to come looking for family. We have so many fun games to show them, and we are always, always ready to play.
We hope you enjoyed it. If you liked this video, please hit that like button and don't forget to subscribe for more content like this. Take care, and I'll see you in the next one.